right, good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for being here and your patience as we begin. Today is Monday, August 19th, 2024, and the time is 6:04 p.m. At this time, we're going to go ahead and begin with a roll call. And Ms. Garcia.
Mayor Walter,
Here.
Vice Mayor Mendoza, Councilmember Larson,
Here.
Councilmember Neal. Councilmember Buccellato did let us know she was not going to be available this evening. Councilmember Maldonado.
Here.
Councilmember Adam.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Perfect. Let's begin with a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. At this time, we'll go ahead and open up the first call to the public. Call to the public for public comment on issues within the jurisdiction of the Town Council. Council rules may limit public comment to 3 minutes. Individual council members may respond to criticism made by those commenting, may ask staff to review a matter raised, or may ask that a matter be put on a future agenda. However, members of the council shall not discuss or act on any matter during an open call to the public unless the matters are properly noted for discussion and legal action. I do have one request at this time from Ms. Sherry Butler.
Thank you, Mayor Walter and members of Town Council. I appreciate this moment. So I'm here tonight on behalf of the Florence Ecumenical Council and Harvest Share. I am promoting the Florence, it's a first responder breakfast. It's a community-wide event for first responders and to honor the people in the military. It is at the Catholic Church. It's Assumption Parish. And it's September 7th, 2024, 8 to 10. So I just want to let everybody know. You'll start seeing it on social media. I'll put a post out tonight on the Chamber of Commerce, our social media page. But I just wanted to let you know, Mayor Walter, members of Town Council, you will receive a personal invitation from one of the members of the organization. So it's free. The dining place will be inside, and the food will be prepared outside. So I just wanted to let everybody know it'll be air conditioned, So it's pancakes, eggs, sausage, juice, so a little bit of everything, yeah. So thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. And it was lovely last year. I like how they're rotating between the different parishes.
Yeah, I think it's nice. And we'll have some flyers in the back, so if you printed them earlier today. So this is truly a team effort. There's a lot of churches that have come together, organizations, Knights of Columbus, Future Forward, Chamber of Commerce, and it's just really cool for us all to come together to help other people. So thanks.
Thank you. And we have Susan Maldonado online.
Wait, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. I have a question. I was reading over the little agenda that you had from last week's special meeting, and this is in reference to one of the electors that was Tracy Floria. I'm kind of disturbed about how this all came about within 4 days of her being elected, that she's not living in town of Florence any longer. Like, did this happen? When did this happen? Because this really could have changed the trajectory of this election with write-ins and, so did she become not a town of Florence resident right after the election? Because that's like 5 days. I mean, unless you're packing up in the middle of the night and splitting town, you pretty much know that you're not going to be living. So I'm kind of curious about how that came about. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your comments, and I will have Ms. Garcia follow up with you. All right, we do not have any additional speaker requests at this time, so we'll close the first call to the public. And moving on to our presentations, and we do have a presentation of the 2024 Historic Preservation Conference. At this time, I'll call forward Ms. Maricela Benitez.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, we bring to you an overview of the Historic Preservation Conference that staff and a member of your own council, Kathy Adam, went and attended. It was me, my colleague Andrew, our building official Kevin, and of course Kathy went as well, and we all attended back in June. This was in Prescott. I'll let Andrew take it from here since he did the first couple of slides.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. So I just have 2 slides to present tonight, just keep it brief. 2 major themes that I learned from the sessions that I attended. Maricela and I attempted to go to different sessions so that we could cover all different kinds of topics at this conference. And the first major takeaway from here is that restoration is key to developing a sense of place. And so when I say sense of place, I mean not only a sense of feeling like you belong somewhere where you're living, but also being proud of your town. And the session that really stood out for this was the discussion on the restoration of the historic post office in Prescott, which you see pictured here. This is like the crown jewel building in downtown Prescott. It's giant, and imagining if this was closed and you couldn't go into it, and if it was dilapidated, you wouldn't feel very proud of this, but somebody did buy it and went through this entire process, lengthy process of restoration of this building, and it's absolutely beautiful. And what you see, the property owner, when he originally bought it, he said he was not very familiar with the historic preservation process, how any of this stuff worked, and eventually he really started to fall in love with it and take on this project and understand what this meant to the community. And so then you see he goes from not knowing anything about it to presenting at a conference. And that's really important, not only for the property owners to care, but then residents of the town can be proud of their big building here. So part of what you learn too with these conferences is not just attending the sessions, but also being able to explore the city itself. We did get to go inside of this post office, and it is a functioning post office. It's really awesome. So then thinking about how we can apply it to our jobs, having clear guidelines of what you need to do, and helping applicants have a smooth process through a lot of this heavy, intense work on our part is very important. The second major takeaway that I got from these presentations was respect is key. So I attended several sessions about NAGPRA regulations, and NAGPRA stands for Native American Graves Repatriation Act. And NAGPRA is a federal law, and what it does, it essentially ignores a lot of tribal sensitivities that may be within individual tribes, because tribes across the entire country have different culture that this act may not be sensitive of. So a lot of what they presented was geared towards from one tribe to another and what they have to do to comply with NAGPRA regulations. So that wouldn't necessarily apply to us in town of Florence, but they do bring in those kind of reality checks here and there, where the one quote that really stood out to me is, would you want to rebury your own grandmother, right? And I have pictured here the Hopi seal. One of the presenters was a member of the Hopi tribe and mentioned how in their culture, when one of their members dies, they bury them and you're supposed to forget them because that helps them pass on to the next life. And harping over somebody's death keeps them kind of trapped in the world. So the idea of having to rebury is not, is a very stressful situation for members of the Hopi tribe specifically. And then I have the Gila River community listed here because they are right next to us, right? And so you have to think, for my job and for what we do in our office, how can we show respect at the local level and reinstate trust in local government and cooperate with what they need from us? So I'm going to pass it over to Mari now, and she'll tell you about her sessions. Thank you.
Of course, one of the key parts of historic preservation is reusing old buildings or preserving what is there. This was the Monroe Street Abbey was a session on readaptive use, repurposing, and preservation of what's already there. This abbey is located in downtown Phoenix on Monroe Street. It was established in 1929 until it was abandoned by its congregation in 1968. A fire did gut it in 1984, but in this modern time, an architect had gone through these ruins and thought this would be a great opportunity for a new public space. Their idea was based in the theory of changing ruins into a public or open space for people to walk through, meaning you don't necessarily need to reconstruct a whole new roof or brand new structures with it. You can use what's there to help. They did say that some of the main helpers were the pigeons. The local pigeon population dropped a lot of plant seeds to provide some of the growth that was already found within, and that gave them the idea for gardens. And this architecture firm also went about finding groups and other people to help restore the building in terms of reinforcement. So they reinforced what was there because, of course, the interior was already exposed, and you need to enforce that against the nature that it wasn't originally made for. It is currently being used as an event space, and here's a photo of what the concept had. They showed a video that showed them putting cranes inside the building in order to help put metal stability posts as well as just interior infrastructure to keep the walls, and they redid the stained glass window in the main entry area, and they hope to continue their efforts with fire and building to create kitchens and other event spaces for larger events within. Something that was off the beaten path, no pun intended, was the preservation of the Beal Wagon Road. This was a road that was supposed to be safer than the California-Oregon Trail. It was built between 1857 and 1860. Parts of the trail still exist today, and thus preservation efforts are in progress to keep it so. The way they were able to track and map these trails was very interesting because they based it off of historical brass caps that were already within the ground if they could find them. And they also found a trail of Boy Scout plaques, because I guess in the past, some Boy Scout groups had gone out and tried to track out this trail as part of one of their initiatives. So some are intact, but some are also in danger, as there are parts that are just developed entirely, and there's others that need to be mitigated against wildfire. Now, every year, the most important part is that this trail used to be used by the camel pack animals that went through this trail back in Arizona's past. One of the ways that pioneers went through those hot and kind of sandy areas was they imported camels. And so these camels took these trails, and every year they help some camels lead through and commemorate that history. Another was the preservation of artifacts from wildfires. So the main purpose of emergency services is to protect people and property. But this also includes protecting historic resources, such as pottery or sites and buildings themselves. So they presented, by they I mean groups of firefighters and and archaeologists that work in the northern Arizona area, and how they come together in terms of the incident commanders and archaeologists to map out where these hot spots are in terms of artifacts, and where prescribed fires, hand cutting, wood chipping, and lowland brush kind of scrubbing can be done and put around it, or to help mitigate some of the possible wildfires that be there. They said the biggest thing that helped them advance in that area was drone technology, mapping, and predictive modeling through computers and technology. Our building official went to the moving historic structures to understand what kind of permitting and what kind of manpower goes into the movement of historic homes and buildings in its entirety. There are cases where entire buildings are lifted up and moved to different places. This can be costly, but it is a viable strategy to protect that historical culture. And specialized dollies, bolsters, trailers, and trains are actually required to do so. And permitting is sometimes more local, but when it comes to traveling on roads or railways, it'll cross into different states, into different police and utility departments in order to make sure that these structures are safely moved through streets and kept away from stuff such as utility lines or power poles. Overall, some major takeaways are what is considered historic depends on the significance and can vary. It doesn't exactly pertain only to physical structures. It can also be about verbal stories, artifacts, physical trailheads, and just that sense of place, and of course the people. Buildings can be considered abandoned, but there are always possible ways to change into a viable space or to repurpose them. Emergency management and preservationists must always work together in order to mitigate fires and other natural risks to artifacts within local areas. And of course, some parts of historic preservation do need updates, especially when taking into consideration under-recognized groups of people. Staff has found a lot of this information very intriguing and helpful. I myself have thought of ideas for our historic home tour that's coming up in February. But we want to make sure to present this information and thank all those who attended and helped us get there. Are there any questions?
Councilmember Adam, I'll let you start.
I don't have a question, but a little applause. We have always been well represented at these conferences by the HDAC Commission. So generally, we traveled in hordes, and people there would say, oh, Florence is in the house. This time, staff, since I've been here going to the conference since 2010, that's the most staff that has ever attended the conference, and I really appreciate Chief and AJ for sending that many people. I think especially for Andrew and Kevin that are new to this, Mari has attended before. I think it was a real eye-opener, and I can't thank you enough for sending them. It goes a long ways to connecting to the historic district and supporting all of us, so thank you.
I had one question.
Okay.
This is a good one. So, listening to the presentation and watching all of the items come before, and you even summed it up at the conclusion of your presentation. You said that, you know, in looking at the historic annual event that we have here, but in just looking at our day-to-day historic buildings, what specific strategies or actionable steps would you suggest that maybe our town needs to look at with actionable items in moving forward for the historic preservation of our community?
That is a great question. I think something that we try or should try to continue to do is reaching out to those who are new within town and those who are currently trying to, trying to get into these buildings, because I understand with the new faces, they're not always up to date with the information that's available. We are looking to ask a SHPO member, our State Historic Preservation Officer, to come on down to give a presentation on our next Historic District Advisory Commission. and to give information not only on the CLG grant, but just in preservation in general. And also at that meeting, we're hoping to discuss more about our guidelines. So I think keeping these options open for information and also trying to keep connections with those on the day-to-day basis, I think that'll be a great stepping stone moving forward.
Well, you brought an amazing group with you, and you always bring back fabulous information, so thank you to our staff and the board. Councilmember Maldonado.
Thank you. You actually sparked something in me. So with that being said, like, is there something we can do, like, with local, like, realtors that have these buildings? Is there something already in place, like, as part of where they can come out and reach out to historic folks to try to incorporate that into, like, hey, this is what you need to know beforehand? Is there something already in place, or is it something that we're trying to look at?
Something that might be good to put together as a packet, maybe like a guest packet for realtors to have in order to pass on to people themselves. I know I've only talked to a couple of realtors when it comes to if they just ask the general question, is this historic and what will they need to do? I give them kind of the basic information on what if something does change or if something does happen. But I understand that information doesn't always get passed around. So maybe a general guest packet, if not posted on our website, but also passed out to some of the realtors. But getting in connection with those realtors would be the main thing when it comes to something like that, to get the information out.
Thank you.
So just lesson learned, looking at that building that I think was a shell on Monroe Street in Phoenix, had we thought outside the box before taking Cocopelli down, right? And we wouldn't have just a gravel parking lot. That's the possibility of sense of place, right? So these guys now understand, so they'll bring it forward next time we're faced with something like that.
Yes, Councilmember Neal.
Actually, I was looking at the building that got damaged by fire and gutted. Kind of reminded me of our movie theater there that ain't been used since Murphy's Romance, and that would be a great idea for something like that. I'm pretty sure Murphy's Romance is the last time it got used, but that would be a cool idea.
Agreed. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you for giving this opportunity.
Moving into item 7, which is our consent agenda. All items on the consent agenda will be handled by a single vote as part of the consent agenda unless a council member or a member of the public objects at the time the agenda item is called. A is authorization to award downtown events assistant funds in the amount of $1,700 to the Greater Florence Chamber of Commerce. Item B, authorization to enter into an intergovernmental agreement with Pinal County for participation in their annual safety rodeo. Item C, authorization to enter into a goods contract with Seaman Tech, purchase an M15 concrete mixer using Sourcewell contract 060122 in an amount not to exceed $139,613.52. Item D, approval of change order number 1 with Consor Engineering for an additional engineering services for the Butte Avenue Bridge project known as CIP T12, caused by delays with the San Carlos irrigation project at the cost of $29,961.89, bringing the contract total to $304,718.65. Ladies and gentlemen, that is our consent agenda. Is there a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda as read.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
And all opposed? Motion carries. And item 8 is our unfinished business. This is 8A, discussion, approval, disapproval of resolution number 1901-24. A resolution of the Town of Florence, Pinal County, Arizona, approving the conditional use permit for a drive-through facility at 961 South Main Street, Florence, Arizona, 85132. This is assessor parcel number 2020436A, PZ 2416, with stipulations. At this time, I am going to ask AJ to come forward. AJ Monroe.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, council members. This was a matter discussed at your June 3rd council meeting. During that meeting, it was tabled. In your packet, you'll recall, well, I included the minutes, but there was a conversation about asking questions about who the user was going to be. At that time, the applicant indicated they did not know. They were simply seeking the drive-through use. After a few follow-up conversations with the applicant, a most recent conversation on August 7th, they do not have a specific user for the drive-through facility. And considering that information, considering that knowing that a use, once approved, is going to pass on from first user to second user to third user, is the town considers that, I think it's really important to think through that the drive-through use could be the maximum, most intense drive-through use on that property. Understanding that, and then understanding any number of the concerns that were raised during the meeting on the 3rd about traffic and some of those relationships with pedestrian movement and things like that, especially considering this property is directly across the street from the high school, that this may not be the best time to move forward with this project. I don't believe it's any indication that the community is against economic development, but I think it's important to consider student safety, traffic circulation in that area, and would really suggest that we may want to consider looking at how to better sort through pedestrian circulation in that area, traffic that may be there at peak times of the day. But developing those sort of studies will take time. As staff considered the direction you provided, it was clear to us that that was going to take time. It required partnerships with Arizona Department of Transportation and many stakeholders that would be in that area. Ultimately there's a decision before you this evening is about the best way to go. But without understanding that this is a drive-through use, not really knowing who it's going to be or who we would be working with, understanding the complications of that area with traffic circulation, pedestrian circulation, it may not be the best time to move forward with this request.
Well, and just for the record as well, when applications like this come forward, really it's just staff doing their job, putting it on the agenda to come forward and giving the information to council. And so I appreciate your honesty and transparency in communicating this. And it's not necessarily limiting a business or being anti-business friendly, because if the right zoning met the guidelines, then a business could go in without those, what's the word? Conditional use. So, in my opinion, nothing has changed since our last conversation, other than at this time we'd have an opportunity to make a motion.
I
Okay.
think the new news, and thank you, Director, that was a very, very good overview. And the new news that, to me, is that we're hearing them say it's going to be a small mom and pop coffee drive-through, but as you said, no one controls who's going to come in and buy them out. And should a Starbucks or a Dutch Brothers want to come out, once you give the conditional use permit, it's there. They can come in. So that would be my fear, and so I would vote to disapprove.
If there's no other questions or comments, would somebody like to put a motion on the floor?
I'll make a motion that we disapprove resolution number 1901-24.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Moving on to item 9, which is our new business. 9A is discussion, approval, disapproval of the cash substitute for roadway improvements and payment agreement with 4 Star Real Estate Group Incorporated. Mr. Chrysalis.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council. As part of the final plat, improvement plans are required. In this project, the final plat was approved a significant time ago, somewhere approximately in the mid-2000s, if I remember correctly. It was 2006. There's no records. No one's been able to supply approved improvement plans, which would have since expired. When the development came back to get improvement plans, all the old unapproved plans came through along with all of our new standards for design reports. One of the many things that were identified in this project, we review wastewater improvements, water improvements, transportation improvements. As part of this project, originally the improvement plans showed a section of roadway that was to be constructed, but only a half of that street, which was in the light blue, would have been constructed. That segment does not have any access to that subdivision or the adjacent subdivision. So that roadway would have sat unused for several years, and eventually just what is typical of roadways, they need to be kneaded like bread, and those tires need it. Living through 2008 through 2011 with all the zombie subdivisions, we saw roadways shrink up and fail at an extremely accelerated rate. So the idea was to not have the developer construct that segment and instead process a cash in lieu, which would give the town, through an engineer's estimate, the dollars that would have been utilized to build the road that the town would have had to maintain regardless of no vehicles being on there. A second portion of this project is the water line improvements. So the segment in yellow was what the developers, engineers needed to propose for this project to move forward. It's important to note that there are several requirements that are necessary for a subdivision to be constructed. That is, one example is the fire flow requirement. One of them is a looped system that is a requirement by code of more than a subdivision of more than 30 lots. And so there are several requirements that needed to be met. And by installing the yellow segment, which by the way was at one time a CIP project for the town of Florence, they were able to meet all those requirements, the segment in yellow. The segment in red was remaining and was the town's responsibility and has been a town project for probably 4 years. Unfortunately, we were utilizing WIFA funds for the segment in red, which require environmental clearance, and we were not able to get environmental clearance before the developer was ready to move forward on the roadway construction. So the town had a choice essentially to allow the development community forward to build the road, and then right afterwards, within so many months, let's say, cut that brand new road open and install a water line, or work with the developer to install that water line. The town did go out and get different bids for this project. Unfortunately, our JOC contractor, which was the higher of the bids, was not able to guarantee the completion of the project in a timely manner. But as I stated, thankfully, the on-site contractor, which was approximately $80,000 cheaper, was able to guarantee it because they had pipe already ready to go. And they were mobilized. this project, this item tonight just formalizes the completion of those two, the cash in lieu for the roadway, and then the town processing to reimburse Four Star for the water line improvements that were a town responsibility. That red line that extends all the way up to Adamsville is again a town project, but the improvements performed by Four Star were between Keating and Liberty. They only performed the necessary improvements that were going to be under pavement, and then they stopped. And the town has been under construction on W66 since. We've completed the Adamsville Road section, and we are now in process of completing the section on Centennial Park. With that, are there any questions?
Are there any questions on this item? No, we do not have any questions on this item, but we do understand the background previously. So thank you for going in depth. With that, we need a motion. Oh, go ahead.
Real quick, I was just going to say thank you for including maps, so that way our public is aware of what you're talking about, where it's located, and making sure that we all have the visual as well. So I just wanted to say thank you for that. Okay, you need a motion?
Yes.
Oh, I don't have the agenda.
So I'll make a motion that we approve the cash substitute for roadway improvements and payment agreement with Four Star Real Estate Group.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Item B, discussion, approval, disapproval of entering into a professional services agreement with Tierra Right of Way Services LTD for CIP T112 Hunt Highway widening from the curve to Attaway using the City of Tucson Cooperative Contract in number 171-56302 in an amount not to exceed $143,912.15. Mr. Chrysalis.
I believe this will be the fourth time staff has asked for the assistance of a right-of-way professional in my 8 years. Again, when you get to a bigger community or a county, they will have what's called a real estate division within that organization. We do not do enough work to have a full-time person on staff. And in fact, the county's helping us with right-of-way acquisition on our project north of Franklin on Hunt Highway. And so these services are to reach out, hold meetings. This is a very timely, all the coordination that is needed to acquire those rights of way. This would be specifically for the project on Hunt Highway at Attaway. So it would be a segment of Attaway as well as a segment of Hunt Highway extending from the curve, or where you drop from the 6 lanes to the 2 lanes, and then what was going to be approximately 1,000 feet east of Attaway. The town has recently received news from Pulte and El Dorado that they are going to be doing their project on the north side along their frontage all the way to Felix. So the town will now be modifying our plans to tie into their plans and trying to coordinate construction as best as possible, but at least have a project that will be contiguous throughout the whole corridor and will not taper back for, 800 feet and then go back. And that happened even after this agenda item was written. So I guess I'm making an example of why contingency is often needed, especially when we want to expedite projects. So as far as this scope is going, even since the written form of the scope, it is going to change after this award to include a little additional distance along the same property owner. We will now be extending all the way to the end of Mr. Peterson's property. With that, are there any questions for this item tonight?
Kathy Adam, Councilmember Adam.
So we've been working on Hunt Highway, seems like an eternity, and my question is, will this cover any and all remaining right-of-ways that we need to obtain, or are there still others that this company doesn't or wouldn't address?
There is significant right-of-way that the town does not own that will be east of this all the way to 79. We have sent out a map in the last 30 days to all the property owners identifying their segments. We have received correspondence back, them explaining that, yes, these are their segments, and we are having conversations right now to try to figure out how some of that can be developed again, and not in such a piecemeal fashion. But unfortunately, development does drive these kinds of things, and we don't pay for roads from the tax base when the developer is responsible for those roads, unless it's just a small segment to kind of, again, add continuity. But we generally don't build roads in anticipation. The problem is that we never know when 2008 is going to occur again. And unfortunately, to have a roadway that is maybe constructed, maybe that project goes dormant. I won't mention names of subdivisions or owners, but those subdivisions can sit there, as Western Crossings did, for approximately 18 years, when in 2006 that project was ready to move forward in all earnest, and then 18 years later. So could you imagine if the town had fronted that money and did improvements and just sat there, water lines that never been charged, wastewater lines that now have gotten full of dirt for 18 years. So unfortunately, it's a matter of timing. So there are additional rights of way that the town does not own, and if development continues to leapfrog and not do some of that, in a logical manner, it's possible the town may have to step in and purchase more right-of-way in 2045, and like I said, acquire those additional rights-of-way.
But meanwhile, I appreciate that you're trying to eliminate that widening and narrowing effect all the time. That is so detrimental, so thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments? All right, with that, we need a motion.
I make a motion to approve agenda item 9B, approval of the professional services agreement with TI Right-of-Way Services as read.
Second.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And all opposed? Motion carries. Our next item is item C, and this is resolution number 1916-24. Discussion, approval, disapproval of resolution of the Town of Florence, Pinal County, Arizona, adopting the recommended modifications to the Town of Florence classification and compensation plan and pay ranges for employees based upon the findings of a salary analysis for fiscal year 24-25, with implementation effective September 19th, 2024. Ms. Catherine Wilson.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. On May of this year, Interim Town Manager Walls approached me and asked me to research and develop a job description for the position of Utility Director, which I did. And then I also benchmarked the position to see where it would be placed on the salary range. It did benchmark out at a range 69 with a starting salary of $118,569. The maximum to that range is $177,855. This puts it very competitive with our comparators. It's a little bit over the mid-range of about 1.5%, which is pretty nice. I did attach the job description that was developed the benchmarking and the salary schedule for you all to review as part of the documentation with the agenda item.
All right. Questions? Councilmember Maldonado? Oh, I thought you had your hand. Hi, Chief Falls.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members, I just wanted to go ahead and say, wastewater and water has been handled by a director who has been wearing multiple hats. And that director, I believe, has been phenomenal in taking on that job, and his expertise, I think, is unsurpassed. But the town is growing, and I think the importance of having this position under one hat is important with the correct credentialing and handled 24/7. So that is why we are asking that the town go ahead and approve a utility director so that we can go ahead and put the correct emphasis on this particular function for the town.
It's definitely needed, especially with everything that has transpired, and the growth that we've experienced over the last 20 years has been exponential. All right, if there's no comments or questions, we need a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve resolution number 1916-24.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
And all opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, council.
Item D is ratification of all expenditures related to change order number 1 with Ripple Industries to provide the installation of SCADA system as identified within the construction documents and engineering plans for the South Wastewater Treatment Plant in the amount of $77,400. This brings the total contract not to exceed $1,177,400. Mr. Chrysalis.
Mayor, this was the item that was pulled by staff.
Oh, yes, I see my note now. Thank you. Item E is discussion approval, disapproval of setting policy for recognizing annual service of our Florence Teen Council. Ms. Garcia, do you want me to take this, or do you want to take it? Either one is absolutely fine with me.
Your preference?
If you take this, I will take the next.
All right. So included in the bylaws of the Teen Council is a reward system that council was going to go back and make decisions on. And we've actually included it. It is Article 6, Rewards and Recognition. It says the town council will determine an appropriate method for recognizing successful participation in the Florence Teen Council. A decision will be made, and then we'll make sure we have it on hand. And so what we're asking for is the town council to consider giving a $250 certificate to each kid that can be used for any level of higher education. It can be a trade school, it can be anything that they want to do to advance themselves and their educational opportunities after they graduate from high school. So if a kid served for 4 consecutive years, it would be a $1,000 certificate that would be waiting. If they served for 1 year, it would be $250. And so we're asking for council to consider that. How we plan on managing it would be that we will have all of the names on file with their certificates, and we will have little forms that tell the kids, this is how you turn it in. They have to put down their name, of their choice of where they're going to attend. We would actually make sure that we cut that check in the kid's name to that institute, and it would be on file for them to use by the university, the junior college, the trade school, to make sure that they are carrying on their activities, but bringing back their skill set, hopefully, to Florence in a later year. Our teen council has been very successful. There are 7 members of the teen council, so there's a possibility of $1,750 being set aside each year for that recognition. If council wants to do lower, if they want to do higher, if they want to do some other form of recognition, staff is all ears, and we're ready to change direction if that's what council would choose. Mayor, back to you.
So I was doing a little thinking after we worked on this, and I wanted to share with council, with the amount of commitment and the amount of time that our youth are giving to the community, both in attending the meetings as well as the different special events, activities, representing us at the league conference. I would like to see it, instead of $250 a year, $500 a year, and then also presenting it at their awards ceremony or some type of ceremony at the school, so that way they're both recognized from the governmental side, but also their academia side.
I have
And
a
now I'm gonna
question.
open it
Do
up.
we
Yes.
cap the number of teens that can be on the council?
There's 7, so it mimics.
Okay, always 7.
It mimics our council, so
Okay.
there's a chair, a vice chair, a secretary, a treasurer, and then 2 council members.
And so how many of them serve multiple years?
So we'll have one young lady that, she's graduating this year, so she'll only have served last year and then this year. So she'll receive recognition for 2 years.
I just feel like, I think it's a fabulous program, and I know the kids get a lot out of it because we put so much into it, right? I would like to see some sort of graduated where, there's an incentive where you're in the council for more than 1 year and you bump up a little bit rather than start everybody. So for the first year, instead of doing 500 for everybody, maybe it's a little less, and then the second year, third year, and fourth year, where there could be a chunk of change that if a student stuck with it for 4 years, because then they come out to me very well-rounded. Just my 2 cents.
That's an excellent idea, and I respect, because I know the background that you come from with business, so thank you.
I do like that idea, but also I want to encourage anybody to get involved. And so if we only have 7 members, then that might stifle people from coming in, or that's where I'm like a little bit of maybe not always healthy competition, because I've been in it for 3 years. I'm going to fight to make sure I'm staying there versus somebody else is trying to take that seat. So I don't know. To me, I see both sides of that, but I do love the fact that we're recognizing these teens and we're also providing an avenue for them to gain a skill set and hopefully bring it back to Florence. I love the idea. My thoughts are, how much did you say per year? Because when I'm doing the math, my math wasn't mathing.
We're doing, the original suggestion was $250, but we can change to $500 per year. And then I'd like to add one more thing. We've had 2 teens that are part of the teen council that once you miss 3 consecutive meetings, just like in the code, it's automatic removal. So if you're removed in your term, that would mean that you didn't have a successful year. And so then there would be no monies put aside for those who did not serve a successful year.
Correct.
And so are there excusable reasons why if they miss?
You can miss, it's very similar, it mimics our council, where you could miss 3 meetings, but on the 3rd meeting, if you have not called, you have not communicated, then you're
That's fair.
automatically
That's fair.
off.
That's part of the learning process, right? There's got to be a little hurt if
Yes.
you don't live up to your expectations.
And it's communicated, so the understanding, the terms are very well stated, both in writing and verbally.
So if we have $500 times, you said but if we did consistently, so then you'd be times 4,
At
right?
most, you could have $3,500 a year if all 7
That's
served.
2,000. Well, that's 2,000, and so if we have a year that everyone has served for 4 years, times 7, you're talking 28,000. Is that right?
Well, and the way that staff will do it is we will set that money aside in the kid's name each year. We will know how much money is. We are working with the finance department, so we will put in a report, and so that money is set aside each year, and the proper amount is budgeted each year. As soon as council makes a motion for what they want to do, the draft bylaws will go back to the teen council, and the teen council will adopt the draft bylaws again. And we'll have a set of the council's minutes attached to those bylaws.
That could be 14,000 for 1 year if you have everybody who served for 4 years, all doing it at the same time, all cashing out. You know what I mean?
I see how you're looking at it. You're looking at it over the long range, but you have
Yes.
to look at it as our fiscal year of how that would impact us. And at the most it would impact us fiscally, setting it aside, would be 7 members. If they all completed at $500 each, is $3,500 at most that fiscal year.
Right, but we wouldn't be setting it aside because it's when we expend it.
You have to remember that the money would be earned in those years, but so say that you have a kid who's going into the military, and they go into military for 4 years. That money will not be expended until they come back and they say, okay, Florence, they write the letter back to us and they say, this is the institution that I'm attending to, this is what I hope to gain, and I would like my money deposited at this institute. So it might not be expended the year that they graduate from high school, but it will be there waiting for them when they come back.
And I guess where I understand that and I respect that, and that's all great. I do want to reward these kids. Don't get me wrong. However, I'm just concerned about setting an expectation that's not going to be maintainable. So I want to make sure that we're creating a program that doesn't just last for the first 4 years, and then we realize we can't afford it going forward. So I'm trying to create or think of something that has longevity. So I do like the incremental steps, but I fear that it won't work out the way that we ideally think it will, where everybody all of a sudden we're paying for 4 years right then and there, and then we realize, oh shoot, we can't do that. So I'm just a little bit
Kind of a
concerned about
manual bookkeeping, forward accounting
Yes.
nightmare.
that. Yes, I'm just a little bit
gotcha.
concerned about that. I don't know the right answer to that. I mean, that's more of you guys have to know how your accounts are handled or where money is or how much we can expend or how that's all going to play out, but I'm just a little bit concerned about that.
We looked at we don't want to do something that would be depositing something in a junior college that they might never attend, and we want to make sure it's meaningful. If council wants to go a different direction, we can go a different direction. Staff recommended the 250. If you'd like to change that to 500, if you'd like to look at graduated terms, we can look at all that. If you want us to go back and look at a different model, we can bring it back at the next meeting. We're open to your suggestions.
I like the 500, but maybe you could just walk us through and think about it. Excuse me. What is the actual logistics to making that happen? How do you account for it? How do you track it? And, right.
It's a database that we keep the names in. So there'll be a clerk database that will keep the names in a record, and they'll be certified, and there'll be a dollar value that's next to their names.
I'm tying it back to the budget, to the finance side.
Yeah.
From the finance side, how does Carl account for that?
That would come.
Not knowing who's coming back and who's.
If you got one year and they don't come back the second year, and then you've got another person
Go in the
here and they got
military
1
and-
year, I mean, that just sounds like an accounting nightmare, to be honest. I mean, you've got 4 kids that all served 1 year each times 7, and it just sounds like that's going to be a lot. So I just want to create something that's easy to maintain and we can carry on and not make it.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the council, so every year at the end of the year, at the beginning of the year, we will budget, let's say, $3,500, and at the end of the year, the deputy town manager would submit a list to us of who earned those funds for this year. We would record their name and what it's for in the town council fund. So we'll have a living document every year that, we can go back 10 years and see who we set it aside for on what day, what fiscal year.
The other thing, just like we do the military proclamations every year, we communicate with them, we find out where they are, what they're doing. So our intention is going to be able to track the alumni who used to be part of the Leadership Academy, to track what they're doing, how successful they're being. So there's some behind the scenes stuff that we're trying to engage to see if the teen council was inspiring or not inspiring. So it's kind of like a survey that goes out every 2 years, tracking where they are, what they're doing, how it comes back. It's very common in teen council programs.
So Councilmember Larson, what I'm hearing is that every year at the start of the year, we find out how many teens there are that could potentially earn the $500, and that comes out the top of the town council budget. Is that how that works?
I'm just envisioning this Excel spreadsheet with a list full of names from every 14 times, how many people when they served, and I think that's, I love the idea, like conceptually, I love the idea, it's fantastic. Just, if you've got it, you've got it, but yeah, I'm just concerned about that. And longevity-wise, we're talking, if these funds aren't expended, you're thinking about college, and you're right, they could go off to military, it could be 4 years until they actually utilize it, and how long do we let it before it expires, and what happens with those unused funds? To me, there's just so many questions.
That's what I would add is, if we could put an expiration date on it, maybe 10 years, or whatever council feels.
Here's another thought, just for simplicity's sake. Simplicity's sake, no, not savings bonds. They actually changed savings bonds to where you have to purchase them online, and you can't purchase them at a bank anymore. And then you'd also need their social security numbers. We don't want to go down those roads. So here's what I was thinking. When their term is up on council, much like when our term is up on council, much like when we apply when our teens, when they're graduating, they apply for scholarships, whether it's the Michelle Gallagher Foundation, Florence Copper, any of these foundations, they just receive a check. They've served us, they've served the community. That way we don't need to worry about the Excel spreadsheets and keeping track of that way. But I do still want to create the database and have that on file of who our teens were, following up with them every few years to find out how impactful, how meaningful was the background education experience that they've gleaned from serving on the teen council, and how did that impact their future? Is that something that our council would be amicable with?
I think it's reinforcing the idea of financial management, these young adults, and handling their own money, and if they get that check and blow it, so be it, right? But if they've learned the lessons that hopefully we're trying to instill in them, put it in the bank, and they have a head start on college.
I like having the stipulation of graduation. I think that also encourages graduation and the reward of also, so it's not just you've ended your 4-year terms. Oh, I'm sorry, my mic wasn't on. I said I also like the idea of having that stipulation of the graduation being the deadline.
Complicated, because I like that idea, but I think not every child can graduate, and it's not always their fault.
That's true. That's
right,
very
so if
true.
they've gone through the work and something
That's
happens
true.
in their family, I don't think they should be penalized because they didn't graduate.
Mayor,
Yeah.
I think they're all great ideas, and I don't think we should hammer it out right now on the dais tonight. I think we should give it back to staff where they can come up with a bunch of ideas, and then we sit down and pick the ones we want, and we do it then.
Deal. Put it back in here, Court.
So I'd like to make a motion to send this back to staff and hammer it out, and then we decide then.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. All opposed?
Who was the second?
Both me and Johnny both said it. You can write down either.
And motion carries. All right, the next item is item F. This item is discussion, approval, disapproval of scheduling a date to have the teen council shadow the town council during a council meeting. So the date that we tentatively have planned is November 18th, 2024. And just to give a little bit of a background to what the idea is, looking at leadership and civic engagement, trying to really hook our youth in being involved and showing them how everything happens. That firsthand experience to governance is pretty essential, and to have that opportunity is very impactful for them. So a teen shadowing program is an innovative initiative that offers a unique chance for the teen council to gain invaluable experience while fostering mentorship between the town council and the teen council members. So each of us, the idea is, would have their teen council shadowing them. So the chair would shadow the mayor, the vice chair would shadow the vice mayor, and so on and so forth. So we would have our designated teen council member that we would be mentoring. The value of the teen shadowing program is the hands-on experience and learning, so they've already had background and experience within their own council meetings, planning the activities and the events, but this will give them a further opportunity to observe the inner workings of local government, and by shadowing council members, they will gain insight into the decision-making process. They'll understand the complexities that occur in governance, and they'll learn the importance of civic responsibility. So this is basically a live classroom environment where we're training the next generation of potential council members, because they're our community. The key revolves around mentorship and guidance. And one of the most significant benefits of the program is the mentorship that the teen council members will receive from the seasoned town council members. And it not only provides guidance on specific tasks, but it also inspires and motivates the teens by allowing them to be a part of that leadership. So the outline would be the date that we're proposing from staff is on November 18th, 2024. And that is a regularly scheduled town council meeting. This timing is strategically chosen as it falls the week before Thanksgiving, so this is a period when school is still in session, but at the same time it gives opportunities for the teens to participate because there's less demands going on at school. I talked earlier about the pairing and the collaboration. Again, each teen council will be paired with a town council member, allowing for one-on-one shadowing. Staff is also going to be working diligently with the teens and council members throughout this process, making sure that everything is meaningful and productive. During the meeting, so on the day of the meeting, the teen council members will sit alongside their assigned council members. They'll observe the proceedings, they'll participate in all of the discussions, and they'll gain a deeper understanding of the issues that are at hand. And then this is going to allow them to see firsthand what's going on behind the scenes. So some questions might come up that they have that maybe we did not think of at the time, but they'll also have a chance to voice that and to interact, not only with us, but from the dais. Afterwards, we'll have a post-reflection meeting, and what that is, it's kind of like with our first responders. Anytime there's an incident, they always have a post-incident command meeting where they talk about how did it work. This is going to be our post-incident. Sorry. This is a post-meeting reflection. That's what they call it, right, Chief? Post-meeting reflection, and afterwards they will talk about their experiences. They'll be able to ask questions, reflect on things that they learned with their peers and their mentors, and it will allow us a plan for moving forward, especially with the next council, and hopefully this tradition carries on. Ms. Garcia.
This is not something that is normal. It's not something that happens in every community. This is one of those things where this is best practices, where everybody hopes they can go and what they want teen councils to be. And so this is really taking it up a bar at the current league conference. Our kids are actually having 5 minutes on the program where they are presenting to their fellow teams. That's something that we should all be so proud of, and this takes them the next step, and it gives them something to talk about to their teen councils of what they are doing above and beyond the normal as best practices for next year as well. So staff is super excited about this possibility if council would like to do it. Staff has also talked at 2 meetings with the teens to make sure that they would be comfortable. They understand that this is going to be filmed. They understand that they are going to speak on the floor, and they have also agreed to do this as well.
And if you have not had an opportunity to watch the teen council meetings, they are quite elegant speakers, and they do have a very strong understanding of how the process of the meetings already are handled. Councilmember Maldonado?
I think this is a really great idea. You answered my question about if there's any other municipalities doing this, so thank you for bringing that up. And I think OJTs is a great thing because you learn hands-on versus just learning from a book. So thank you. That's pretty cool.
Councilmember
It's
Larson?
very exciting, and I think it's not just OJT, it's public speaking, right? And for young people to get up and look out and speak, I think this is awesome.
I had the pleasure at the Community Services Board meeting. They had a teen member that was there, and it was so great. The ideas that were brought to the table, the communication and the engagement, it literally changed the dynamics of the entire conversation. It expanded the thought process of what we could do with potential projects in the future. And I think that having the experience, not just for the teens, but to have their perspective up here, we could learn a lot even in that one meeting, because these kids have this expansive brain where there is nothing that's not possible. Everything's possible. So I think that it allows us to have a different perspective too, and I always love that growth and development for myself, so I think this will be an exciting opportunity for all of us.
All right, if there's no further questions or comments, we need a motion.
Mayor, may I give a shout out to our Vice Mayor, Aiden Rankin, who serves as a advisor to the Community Services Advisory Board.
Yes, you may. He would love that. He's probably watching right now going,
Make a motion to approve new business item 9F
Second.
as read.
we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And all opposed? Motion carries. All right, next item is our town manager's report.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members, we just wanted to go ahead and say we're excited about next week and joining you and our teen council at the Arizona League and Cities in Town.
2 weeks. Oh, it's next week. It is next week.
It is. We're very excited
They're
too, and it's not very often that they have the opportunities that these young men and women have had the opportunity to experience next week. Any questions regarding the manager's report? All right, with that, we have our second call to the public this evening. Is there anybody in person or online that would like to speak at this time? Go ahead and raise your hand. Come on up, Miss Sherry Butler.
Obviously, this is an impromptu thought. Thank you so much, Mayor Walter, and again, members of Town Council. I appreciate the moment. I just want to say thank you to Paul King and to everybody involved in the downtown event assistance for the Greater Florence Chamber of Commerce, for the Florence Farmers Market, and Ernest Talks. So I'm grateful I was able to apply on behalf of the Chamber this time. And so every little bit helps, and it's always good to think of different ways to work together. So I appreciate the approval of it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and thank you for all your hard work with the organization.
You're welcome. Thanks.
All right, with no further requests to speak at this time, in person or online, we're going to go ahead and close the second call to the public. And moving on to call to the council. Councilmember Adam.
Short and sweet, I want to give a shout out to our Florence Police Department, in particular to our very own Chief Walls, who had a hellacious weekend with our 3 incidents following one on top of another to the point where you didn't know what else was going to happen. And a great shout out to our own canine Kelso, am I saying it correctly? Who was actually the one who caught the immigrant detainee who escaped. So I just want to thank you.
Councilmember Maldonado.
Thank you, ma'am. Just to let everybody know, Florence Car Show, the 8th annual Florence Car Show is going to be February 22nd. There's already 79 folks that have already signed up to have their cars in it. So get your applications in as soon as possible with the Chamber of Commerce. 150 is the cutoff. So just to let everybody know what the cutoff is. Also, I commend all the efforts that went into all the incidents that recently happened. I do hope that some of the stuff that has happened at these facilities isn't due to lack of staffing. I'd like to see what some of the after actions report were from those incidents, and see what could have been done better to have prevented it, and see if that's something that we could work and help with those efforts going forward. Thank you.
Councilmember Larson.
I think everything's been said, so good. Thank you.
Councilmember Neal.
I would like to go back to the teen council thing. I don't want nobody to think that I was being short with anybody. I just think that everybody has some great ideas, and staff needs to get it and hammer it out. And we was taking too long with that. That's where that came from. So please don't think I was being short with nobody, nothing like that. Couple of things. Florence Fire. I would like to thank them. They helped my baby girl out. My baby girl, well, all 5 of them is the world, but they came, helped them out, professional, extremely professional dudes, as always, right on time. PD, Chief, we already talked. Man, your dudes is on it. They on it. Y'all gotta stop a little bit, man. Y'all making Florence too safe. Everybody wanna be here. Man, good Lord. We got too many people. But a big shout out to Florence, PD. Escapes from facilities, all I would say is treat your first responders right, pay them what they should be paid, give them a 20-year retirement. Maybe we'll get people working in these positions that don't let people escape. I believe that is it. Go Gophers.
Vice Mayor Mendoza.
Well, I want to echo, police department has been doing a wonderful job. The other day when I was hearing about an escape, I was standing in front of one of those boxes where we donate clothes, and I'm like, I don't know if that's a good idea to have around our city where they can access clothes to maybe change into. So maybe if we move those somewhere else, maybe like by the police department, or in an area where we have maybe some better control over where this stuff is at, so that we don't have someone changing their clothes. So that's all I've got.
Well, not to be redundant, I'll bring a new, fresh reminder that September 13th, we have the first Youth Teen Symposium that will be happening right here in Florence, Arizona. We will have youth councils from all over the state coming right here to Florence, Arizona, the county seat. So if anybody's out there watching and you run a teen council leadership, you are invited. All the information is online. So we're really excited as well again for next week to watch our youth shine and to also learn more information about what's going on, best practices, ideas all across the state as our council goes to the Arizona League of Cities and Towns, and we'll be bringing back some exciting information. And we'll also make sure that our new incoming mayor and council members have access to that information as well. All right, that being said, we do have an executive session this evening, and with that, I need a motion.
Make a motion that we adjourn to executive session.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.